Hello everyone and welcome back to the program. We live in a world that has made so many advancements in science, technology, and higher education. It's a magical, push-button world of awesome progress. And yet, paradoxically, it's a world full of appalling evils. Family breakdown, abject poverty, illiteracy and disease, violence, terrorism and war. How could a world of such mind-staggering progress also accommodate so much suffering and evil? How do you explain this astonishing paradox? A world with human minds that produce the marvels of our push-button age, and yet cannot solve the most basic human problems of family life or peace between nations. On today's program, we examine the almost unbelievable paradox of progress and degeneration.
The Trumpet Daily.
Prior to the 20th century, the print industry was basically the only mass medium. And yet look at what's happened just in the last 100 years or so with the emergence of radio and television and the internet. Just an explosion of knowledge. I recently attended a broadcast video expo down in London, and the technology on display, it just made your head spin. So sophisticated, so advanced. I sat in on quite a few lectures from some of the leaders in the industry, the writers, the directors, the producers. There was one lecture in particular, one talented young individual that just explained how much could be done with so little, with just a small staff and a little bit of technology, and yet you could produce these amazing documentaries. And we certainly produce a lot of our material on a very limited budget and with just a little bit of technology. And yet what you're able to do these days with just some of that technology, it's astounding. But then at this same expo, there was another presenter who talked about, well, really, he was an up-and-coming director. He made his big splash last year with his movie. And so he talked about some of the advances and how he came into the industry and so on, and it was an interesting lecture. And then I go back afterwards and get on the internet to see what his movie was about, and you can't imagine a darker theme, just a more perverse subject to get into, and then to take that message, that story, and to send it all over the earth. Look at how the technology is used in that case to dispense with so much evil, so much perversion. There was another speaker at this same expo that talked about how pornography fuels so much of the innovation and the development of these technologies. There's such an appetite for pornography that you have these people out there trying to make the technology just that much more advanced, just that much more sophisticated, so that it can deliver these images all over the world and make it so easy to spread that message, to spread that evil. I mean, that's just one example. Look at the world in general, as I said there at the top of the program. Look at how much suffering and evil there is in this very modern world. Look at how much illiteracy there is. Look at how much war and violence. Look at the terrorism that's now hitting all the spots, the hot spots around Europe. Look at the spread of evil everywhere that you look. On the one hand, you have all of this sophisticated technology, all of these advancements in modern education and science. And you have also the spread of these appalling evils. That's the great paradox of our day. Herbert Armstrong talked about that in so many of his writings. In particular, we're going to offer to you this day what science can't discover about the human mind. In this little booklet, Herbert Armstrong talks about the great, almost unbelievable paradox of today. This paradox of all this advancement, all of this so-called progress, and all of this evil. In another one of his writings, The Missing Dimension in Sex, he talked about those who, when we were coming up to these massive changes in morality in the 1950s and 60s, that there were those who were saying, well, this is nothing new. We've gone through these cycles before. This will play out. It'll revert back to the other direction, or the pendulum will swing in the other direction soon enough. And he said in The Missing Dimension in Sex, don't fool yourself. It's getting worse and worse, just as the Bible has prophesied. This is a quote from that book. Human nature is the same, but we simply live in a different world today. The emergence of the phonograph, he's writing this back in the 60s, the automobile, the motion picture, radio, and television, and other productions of the machine age have brought new influences and changing customs. Human nature, adapting to changing times, expresses itself very differently today. In other words, the technology is making it possible to spread the evil faster. Look at how terrorists make use of social media sites to bring in new recruits, to spread their messages of hatred, of evil. On the one hand, again, you can have an organization that makes good use of a technology and advancement like that, and then you see all of the evil and perverted usages. That's the great paradox of our age. Let's notice 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 1. These are verses that we've read quite a few times on this program, on my daily radio program, the Trumpet Daily Radio Show, which you can listen to online live right here in the UK, whether at the trumpet.com website or the KPCG website, kpcg.fm. Here in 2 Timothy 3, verse 1, it says, "This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come." That's what God prophesies for the last days, a time of great danger, grave danger, perilous times. The spread of evil it talks about in verse 2, "For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good." You see family breakdown. You see a world full of coveting, a world where people love themselves more than anyone else. You can see in the next couple of verses, it talks about those who love pleasures more than they love God. They're off seeking pleasure. And really at this Expo down in London, that's what so much of that technology was for. That's what it's there to promote. Pleasure seeking. Movies, programs, music. Disseminating all of that as far and wide as it will go. But that's the problem. We love pleasure more than we love God. Now look at verse 7. It talks about this paradox. Ever learning, so there's this push to learn more, to make more progress. Ever learning, but never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. That word ever there, it means at all times or always. I mean, here we are in this very last generation with this upsurge in materialistic knowledge. And yet God says that's taking us further and further and further from the truth. Further and further and further from the truth of the Bible. Ever learning, but never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. This is the great paradox of our day. The great paradox that Herbert Armstrong talked about in this booklet. What science can't discover about the human mind. Science has discovered a lot. But this is about what it doesn't know, what it hasn't discovered, what it can't tell you about your mind and my mind, and the influences in this world. Satan's broadcast, for example, Ephesians 2 and verse 2. It's a great paradox. Mr. Armstrong talked about this on so many occasions. I'm going to play a clip for you right now. This is coming from one of his messages back in the early 1980s. This is what Herbert Armstrong had to say about this astonishing paradox.
This world doesn't know right from wrong. and this world is in deep trouble. This world is in an almost unbelievable paradox. As I've said time and time again, here we are in a world, in some areas of the world, of awesome progress, awesome accomplishment. And I've said things like, for example, television, the motion picture, the electric light, sending men to the moon and back, close-up photographs right from the surface of Mars, things that they can do, but all of that progress at the same time accompanied by appalling evils, heartache, suffering. Nearly everybody on earth is discontented and unhappy. There's no happiness anymore. Everybody is seeking some kind of excitement, some kind of sensual thrill, some kind of excitement or amusement. The world is in trouble. The world is full of violence, of every crime, of every evil. As I've said so many times, husband and wife can't get along, parents and children can't get along, even brother and sister can't get along, or a pair of sisters or brothers. Family can't get along with next door neighbor. Capital can't get along with labor. Black can't get along with white, or white with black. They can't get along together. Nation can't get along with nation. Group can't only get along with group. And we have troubles. And they don't know how to solve these troubles in our courts.
And so we have all of this advancement, as he said there in that lecture from 1982. And yet the world is in trouble. And that was true in 1982. It's more so today. The world is in trouble, and we don't know how to solve the problems of this world. Continue reading. This is in 2 Timothy 3, verse 13. It says, "But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived." Worse and worse. Mr. Armstrong talks about how just in his own lifetime, he was born there in the late 1800s and lived almost through to the end of the 1900s. He lived to the age of 93. In fact, he talks about this in the Wonderful World Tomorrow booklet. Just how many dramatic changes he witnessed over the course of his physical lifetime. And of course, this booklet's about a new age, a new world that's coming, and soon. But so he writes about this paradox. We've had all of these great changes in our society, all of these developments, these advancements, and yet all this evil. Why? What is the cause? Let me now play for you another clip. This is, again, from a lecture that he gave back in 1982.
Everything is a matter of cause and effect. For every effect, there has to be a cause. For all of the troubles in the world, something is causing them. And I can tell you in a word what is causing them, and I don't have to convince you people because I'm sure you already know. It's just a little three-letter word, S-I-N, sin. Now, what is sin? 1 John 3:4, sin is the transgression of law or of the law.
There's a cause for every effect, as he said there. And the cause for all of our troubles, all of our problems, as he explained, referring to 1 John 3 and verse 4, it's sin. Sin is the transgression of God's law, and Paul said over in Romans 6 that the wages of sin is death. And so we're bringing all of this upon ourselves. Let me read to you what it says over in Isaiah, switching to the Old Testament. This is Isaiah chapter 1, and we'll start in verse 2. It says, "Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for the Lord has spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they've rebelled against me. They've sinned against me," God says. "The ox knows his owner, and the ass his master's crib, but Israel does not know, my people does not consider." I mean, even the animals in the field, they know where their owner is. But my people, The end-time Israelites, they don't know me, and they should know me. Of all people, they should know me. They've accumulated all of this knowledge, ever learning, but they're getting farther from the truth. That's what it says here. Verse 4 continues, "O sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers, children that are corrupters. They have forsaken the eternal. They have provoked the Holy One of Israel unto anger. They are gone away backward." God's people going in the wrong direction. They've gone away backward. That word corrupters there, it means to decay or ruin or perish. That's what we see in our society today, a society where there's so much so-called progress and then degeneration like never before to go along with it. Again, this is discussed in this booklet, what science can't discover about the human mind. This tells you everything that you need to know about why God made us in the flesh and why we have a human spirit, what it's for. This is something that science has never understood or known. It's a revealing booklet, a powerful little booklet. And then this one here also discusses this paradox, this great paradox, why the world is the way it is today. And it tells you a lot about a future world, a new world that's about to be set up and established on this earth. Stay tuned so that you can request your free copies of these booklets today.
The developed nations have made awesome progress. They have produced a highly mechanized world, providing every luxury, modern convenience and means of pleasure. Yet they are cursed with crime, violence, injustice, sickness and disease, broken homes and families. At the same time, more than one half the world is living in illiteracy, abject poverty, filth and squalor. Why, in a world of such awesome progress and advancement, is there so much violence and destruction? Something is missing from mankind's fund of knowledge. To learn more about what's wrong with knowledge production today, request What Science Can't Discover About the Human Mind. Also request Herbert W. Armstrong's book, The Wonderful World Tomorrow, What It Will Be Like. There is hope for this dying world. Today, people live in constant fear of violence and crime from fellow man. But in the wonderful world tomorrow, the Bible says, none shall make them afraid. This advanced good news of tomorrow is as certain as the rising of tomorrow's sun. Request both books today, What Science Can't Discover About the Human Mind and The Wonderful World Tomorrow, What It Will Be Like. Did we mention all our literature is free? And if you haven't already, don't forget to enroll in the free Armstrong College Bible Correspondence course. It's a distance learning program that makes the Bible come alive. Act today and get the understanding you need now.
Coming back to that quote from Herbert Armstrong, that clip I played for you in the first segment, everything is a matter of cause and effect. Sin is the cause of all of our troubles. Let's read what it says in Hosea chapter 4. Hosea 4, verse 6, it says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I will also reject you. That you shall be no priest to me, seeing you have forgotten the law of your God. I will also forget your children." There's consequences for forgetting God, for forgetting His law, for rejecting God's knowledge, for rejecting the truth of the Bible. Verse 7 continues, "As they were increased, so they sinned against me. Therefore will I change their glory into shame." See, as they increased, as they multiplied, or to bring in what Paul said there in 2 Timothy 3, as they increased in knowledge, in learning, so did their sins multiply. What is it that's missing from all of the knowledge production today? All of this advancement, all of this sophisticated progress, what's missing? Well, Herbert Armstrong used to talk about the foundation of all knowledge, being the Holy Bible, how that God's revealed truth is what's missing from modern education. That's what God meant for the instruction book, the Bible, to be. The foundation of all knowledge. Obviously, it doesn't contain all knowledge in this one book. It's the foundation, though. And everything else must spring from that, or else it's often running on a false basic premise. And we're at a point now where it's becoming painfully obvious that we are unable to solve the problems of this world. Why can't we solve the problems? Why do we see so much widespread suffering and illiteracy and evil and war and strife and violence and terrorism? It just, every day it seems, there's something more shocking that happens. Headlines that just make you shake your head. How much worse can it get? Now, I know there's lots of people, plenty of people, that are just blind to these events. Their heads are just firmly buried in the sand. But if you're looking at the world today, if you're looking at the big picture, you should be concerned about what's happening. Let's go over to the New Testament, 1 Corinthians chapter 2. This is the instruction manual God gave Adam and Eve from the very beginning, the basics, the spiritual knowledge. It says in Matthew 11, Christ says that God reveals His truth to babes, those that are spiritual babes, little children, childlike, teachable. God will give us His truth, and then we'll have that foundation. Paul said in Romans 7 that God's law is spiritual. I mean, that's what's missing from all of the knowledge production. There's plenty of materialistic knowledge. There's no lack of gadgets and things, and they get more and more sophisticated with each passing year. But what's missing is spiritual knowledge, God's spiritual law, which teaches us how to love God, which teaches us how to love our neighbor, our fellow man. You don't see much of that in this world today, do you? You see lots of hatred. You see a spirit of competition, of trying to get out and beat the other guy, get out in front, get every advantage for yourself. That's everywhere, that spirit. 1 Corinthians 2 here in verse 9, this talks about that missing spiritual dimension. 1 Corinthians 2:9, but as it is written, eye has not seen nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God has prepared for them that love Him. I mean, this inheritance that God's prepared for us, it can't be conceived by the natural mind of man. It takes another spirit. It takes the mind of God to open up our minds to this precious, precious, and valuable truth. Verse 10, it says, but God has revealed them unto us by His Spirit, for the Spirit searches all things, yes, the deep things of God. You see, God has to reveal His truth to those who have a childlike mind, to those who want to seek after God's ways, God's truth. If we humble ourselves before God, and then we're willing to look into this truth, your mind, my mind, our minds can be opened to this valuable, precious instruction. Verse 11 says, for what man knows the things of a man save the spirit of man, which is in him? Even so, the things of God knows no man but the Spirit of God. Look at what man, the spirit of man, has been able to produce. The animals out on the farm, they can't produce these sophisticated gadgets. They aren't sending some being to the moon. Human beings have been able to do those things. And yet at the same time, human beings can't know the things of God. They can't know the purpose for man and why we're here on this earth. They're cut off from that knowledge because from the very beginning in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve rejected God's truth. And then God sent them forth and cut them off from the tree of life. You read about that in the very first pages of this precious book, the Holy Bible. Down in verse 13 it says, which things also we speak, not in words which man's wisdom teaches, but which the Holy Spirit teaches, comparing spiritual things with spiritual. You can't receive spiritual knowledge from a high school or a university or in pursuing a doctorate. You can't receive the things of God. Verse 14 goes on and says, "But the natural man receives not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness to him. Neither can he know them, because they're spiritually discerned." God's truth, the things of God, the scholars of today, they just see it as foolishness. They laugh at it. They mock it. And meanwhile, look at the world. Look at the evils in this world. Look at man's inability to solve those problems. They should be looking to God. They should be crying out to God for help. They should be asking God for answers, but they won't do it. We're so far from God. Notice this quote from Mystery of the Ages. "Human life is animal existence, but in the form and shape of God, and with the human spirit added to the brain." So we have a human spirit, man does. Man was created to have a relationship with his Maker. Therefore, he was made in his Maker's form and shape, with contact and relationship made possible by the presence within him of the human spirit. But see, as Paul explains here in 1 Corinthians 2 and then over in Romans 8, that human spirit was made so that it would combine with God's Holy Spirit through a process known as conversion. And then you can establish contact with God and receive answers to why this world is the way it is and why there's another world coming to be established on this earth by Jesus Christ and the first fruits. There's a lot more that we could talk about. We just don't have time to get into everything. That's why you need this free literature. We don't ask for anything in return. It's already been paid for. But make sure you get the information you need to request the wonderful world tomorrow, what it will be like, and what science can't discover about the human mind. Both of these booklets are by Herbert W. Armstrong. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.